Hello and welcome to today's episode of the Work at Home Rockstar podcast. Excited for today's guest. He is the founder and CEO of Fathom. And what they do is they've got an app. The app helps remote teams take notes automatically during their Zoom meetings so they can focus on the discussion at hand. Excited to be rocking out today with Richard White. Richard, you ready to rock?
I'm ready to rock, Tim.
Ready to rock. Good. So let's start off on a good note. So tell me a story of success in your business that we can be inspired by.
Early in my career, I think I was really interested in doing this one startup idea, and then I saw that someone kind of launched that idea, and I was kind of bummed. My coworker at the time showed me this news clipping, showed me this article online, and instead of kind of getting ejected by that, I actually cold emailed the people that were building that app, and I emailed them and said basically your product is technically really impressive, but the design is really bad, and I want to be a designer, and I think I can help you. And it actually, I was kind of just a random cold emailer, and turns out they actually read it, then responded, and I ended up working with them for good amount of time. And actually, that was a company that was in the first batch of Y Combinator, which is now this pretty famous seed funding organization, and it kind of made my career. That's kind of how I met all the people I know now, and got me into startups.
Wow. Okay, you cold emailed somebody, a potential competitor, and ended up working with them. That's really, really cool story. Right on. Okay, so then, that worked out really well, but sometimes things don't work out well. So we do talk about the bad note. So tell me a story of something that didn't go as planned on your journey, and how we can recover or avoid it.
Yeah, a couple of years after this, I had started another company called UserVoice, and we were doing decently well. We had raised some money. But we were, one of those classic startups where we were, spending more money than we make every month. And that was fine. We kind of had a plan. And I had delegated all of the finances to my co-founder and just said, okay, you're in charge of this. I was the CEO, but I was like, cool. I don't like doing finances. I'm like a designer. I just like making pretty software. And, so we're burning money. Seemed fine. I think I remember at some point I was like, it feels like our bank balance is lower than it should be. I don't know. I didn't really follow that thread. And then I think one day I actually was dug into the finances myself and realized that my co-founder had misestimated something very wildly. And we were actually on a trajectory to run out of money in a few months. And it was kind of this, I don't think I've ever panicked more in my professional career when I was like, oh my gosh, we're going to go out of business. And because I just screwed up, right? We just got the math wrong. And thankfully, we're able to get some folks that put in some extra money and retooled a number of things. But I think the lesson I learned there was core things in your business, your finances, you can't delegate to someone else, or you can delegate, but you will have to trust but verify and check their work all the time. And I think in general, I've seen that where a number of things throughout my career that I don't like to do, like marketing or finance or whatnot. I can delegate to other people, but I still I can't just completely check out of that part of the business.
Yeah, you need at least, regular reports from that business. I mean, that's what a CEO in a big old company would do, right? They have their people, and then those people sort of report with the summary, the executive summary. Right?
I was so young and naive. I was just like, oh, it sounds like you've got it, right? Not to even think to ask for these things. Exactly.
Yeah. And I mean, I think you are kind of demonstrating the opposite of what a lot of people on this podcast and even listening do. A lot of people have a hard time delegating. You actually went and delegated quite easily to people, which is really impressive.
Yeah. My over have delegated.
Yeah. But it's a really good lesson, because it's one of the reasons why people have a hard time delegating, is because they want to be involved in everything, and you can't be involved in everything, but you've got to have some sort of idea of what's going on, right? So where would you find the balance?
Yeah, I think about I call it being I think the term is T-shaped, right? Where it's I'm a couple inches deep across all the disciplines, right? Marketing, sales, finance, you name it. And then I'm super deep on one discipline, which for me is product design and how we build the product. And so I think and I think most other founders I talk to have the same sort of T-shape, right? Where they're kind of generalists, where they have their domain of expertise, but they've kind of learned over time to be generalists. So they have enough background to have the conversation with the head of marketing, the head of finance, the head of sales, and not have zero idea about like what the other person is saying to them, right? I think it's kind of important to understand how all the pieces kind of work, even if you wouldn't be an operator of those pieces yourself.
Yeah. And, part of the main topics on this podcast really is that when you do become a business owner or even self-employed, you tend to wear all these hats of areas that you might not have expertise in, like finance or
Right.
like marketing or like sales, right? And I mean, you might get into business because you're really good at, this skill and think, hey, I don't need to have a boss. I can do this myself. And you end up having to do all these other things, right? But that's
Right.
a good thing, because if you learn how to do all these things, even though you're not great at them, you at least have an idea, so that when someone tries to, when you try to hire somebody, you know what you're hiring for. Because that can be a challenge too, is hiring somebody to do something that you don't know how to do, right?
I think that's like the hardest challenge, right? When you're getting started. And, I think my original strategy for this was like, okay, I'm not even going to try to do it all. I'm going to immediately delegate and hire someone to do this role. And what I've evolved to do is like, I'm going to try to do this role for a little bit, just so I have to get in there and try it myself. Right. And am I going to do an A+ job? No, I'm probably going to do like a C- job, but at least then I'll have an appreciation for like what the levers are and how this thing kind of works. And then I'll be so much smarter when I do go hire someone to do the A+ job for me.
And the other thing is, you'll be a lot more grateful for what this person is
Yeah.
bringing to the table,
Right.
because
Yeah.
I know, as a service provider myself, you get that quite often, that people don't understand what you go through on a day-to-day basis, and they're asking you things going like, oh yeah, you just whip that up, right? Yeah, no problem. I'm like, what?
That's a good point too. Yeah, I think if I was a much better person to work for or work with because I had some appreciation for like what that job entailed.
Right on. So now we talk about fans, and I suppose, nowadays with social media, the audience is everywhere. But I like to make a distinguishing between what an audience is and what a fan is. And so, how do you go about, converting the audience into a fan, or how do you go about even getting the audience in the first place?
Yeah, I mean, I think so. With Fathom, we kind of had a very fortunate situation where, we're building an app for Zoom, and then Zoom announces they're launching this whole new marketplace for apps. And, those types of opportunities only come around every so often. And so that was a great way for us to kind of bootstrap kind of the audience, if you will, right? And get a bunch of folks trying our app for free. Um, but I really think a lot about how to build fans, because I do think not enough companies, I think so many companies just think about getting users. Like, oh, we just want people using the product. And I don't want people using the product. I want people like loving the product. I don't want people liking it. I want people loving it. And so, I mean, one is first, step one is like, you have to build a great product, right? And for me, the hack for that is I've always built products that solve problems that I personally had. And so it's like, if it really crushes the problem for me, I have some confidence that it'll like crush it for other folks. And obviously have to do research and stuff like that as well. But obviously you have to make a great product. But I think the other two things that people tend to miss is we also try to pair a good product with like really, really good customer care. And so I think most free products, it's impossible to like contact anyone and get any help with it, right? It's like there's always just like, oh, go to the knowledge base, or they like try to like hide from their quote unquote users. And we really early on invested in, you know, making out a really good customer care team, make it really easy to make them accessible, making sure they're incentivized not to just give the most, pat answer, but give a really detailed answer, incentivized to even jump on the phone with you and talk you through it. And I always talked about giving five-figure support for $0 product, right? So that's one half of it. And then the other half is really when you do find people that are, kind of power users, right? That really love the product, that you can tell are telling their friends about the product, like find ways to get them, to bring them into the fold. So we actually have a thing for Fathom called Fathom Founders Club. And after we see people get to a certain level of usage, if we're talking to them and they're super excited about it, we invite them to join this club. And of course, we like send them out like swag and stuff like that. We send them these big boxes like shirts and hats and whatever. But we also give them a small piece of ownership in the company itself. And this is a kind of a new idea I've seen a few companies do, but it's still pretty rare. And so a lot of companies have advisors, and we just look at our power users as advisors, and we treat them as such, because they're giving us good advice about how to make the product better. They're telling their friends, And it's been kind of a huge, huge success for us so far to have kind of this like army of fans, right? It's very similar to music, right? Where you can marshal to like go tell their friends, rally folks online, just keep a lot of buzz up.
Yeah, I mean, your best salespeople is happy customers, right? And it's funny that
100%.
you say that because it's like it's kind of like coming full circle with how you contacted a company because of a similar that you would have been probably a power user to them,
Yep.
and you actually ended up bringing a lot to the table, which makes sense. I mean, people who are fans of your product are going to bring things to the table, right?
Yep. And we've had fans turn into investors. We've had, it's there. It's, I think, probably the most important resource, right? It's not enough to have just like people that like you, right? In this day and age, there's so many products out there. People really need to love you.
Yeah. And you said it, like this day and age, there's so much competition in just about every market that there's got to be something that distinguishes you from everybody else. And like you say, the customer service, hey, I know what you're talking about, because I mean, there are some apps you cannot get a hold of
Yeah.
whoever wrote it or did it. And it is interesting that you say that, because I'm a developer myself. I do development for websites, and I actually contacted an app maker because there was a feature that I wanted and it didn't do. And I was like, so I sent it to him, and turns out he did it. I was surprised that he responded back. But this is awesome. Now I have a really, really cool feature that I'm going to use on multiple websites. And I've also sent it to him. And now he'll be able to probably promote that same feature because no one else offers it. That's why I asked him for it.
That's another great point. I think there's one level is like just doing good customer care, like solving problems, but it's also another level of like, oh, you actually have a good system internally for like how to like manage and organize product feedback. Because most companies don't. Like most companies, you fill out their survey, or you tell them something about their product, you never hear anything about it. And it's funny, my last company, UserVoice, I spent 10 years on this problem. So like we've got a really good process for that internally, but it blows people's minds still when you're like, they fill out a survey and 2 weeks later, you're like, oh, we built that, the thing you asked about in your survey response, we've actually built it. Right. And most companies just kind of drop that on the floor, just gets filed somewhere and, never sees the light of day. And to be able to like tie back, you said this, and because you said this, we did this. That's a game changer, I think, for most people's experience.
Agree 100%. Cool. Now, so let's talk. I mean, this is a great segue into the next topic, which is talking about the band and talking about the people around you. I'm wondering, like, what is your approach to, to building that band around you? And actually, what was the first thing you delegated? It would be another question for you.
Oh, that's a good question. It's kind of changed throughout my career, right? I think, early on in my career, I was more hands-on, like writing code myself and pushing pixels. And first things I delegated, obviously, like I told you, was kind of like finance and marketing, all these other kind of aspects. And now it's actually kind of like inverted, where I actually, now that I've worked with a number of good developers over the years with Fathom, my previous company, UserVoice, I started and I wrote code kind of day one myself. I had a friend that started doing that with me, and then we try to find people to do sales and marketing. For this company, now that I've got, spent 10 years in market and know good developers and stuff like that, I actually first delegated the programming, and I focused on doing all the other little things that I, learned over the years to do. Like I do, I'm a couple inches deep in marketing, sales and whatnot. So I delegated out customer care and actually engineering, and I've stayed on marketing and product design.
Hi, my name is Anik Malaf. I'm from Mastering Ascension, and I've been working with Tim Melanson and the Creative Crew Agency for a number of years now. Tim is my go-to guy for all things technology, and his team have helped me to really create the platform that I need that represents my brand, my message, and connects me directly to my ideal clients. What I particularly love about Tim is before he starts to dive into the technology, he always makes sure that he understands what your global view is, what your ultimate goals are. So then that way you're not wasting a lot of time back and forth switching around technology or platforms. He creates something from the get-go that is scalable, which is highly, highly beneficial for any business. What I've experienced from Tim and his team is they're highly responsive. They are a wealth of information, and they're going to offer you the tools that you need to really make the mark that you want to make in the world. So that's my recommendation for Tim. He's awesome. You're going to love every minute. You won't regret it.
Interesting. And I mean, I can speak directly to that because that's something that I have not delegated, and I've considered delegating multiple times, but it is my genius zone. So I'm
Hmm.
having a hard time dropping the genius zone and giving it to somebody else. But I think you're onto something, because if I did, I mean, as a business owner, I mean, I've had discussions with people before, like, what is the CEO supposed to do? Right? What is their main roles? And actually, I can ask that to you. What do you think are the main roles of a CEO that they should be doing in their business?
Well, I think in a lot of ways, to follow on the band concept, it's almost like you play the music with the band members you have, right? It's also kind of it's not a like, oh, I'm definitely going to delegate this because I don't want to do it. It's okay, well, who do I have around me? Who can I get to join me on this mission? And then I kind of like we kind of figure it out based upon that, right? And I think if I didn't have great developers to delegate to, or if that was still my superpower, I think my superpower is product design. And so I half delegate that with, I've got some folks that I collaborate with, but I still own that. And so it's a little bit kind of like, where are you strong, where are you weak? I think you should always stay. I think one of the mistakes I made my last company is I got out of product design too early and let other people just completely come in, and they didn't have the same vision I did. So I don't know. I kind of resonate with the stay within your genius zone. If that's the thing that like you wake up in the morning and really want to do, I like the whole point of doing it, your own business, is like you get to do the things you really want to do. So maybe I wouldn't delegate that, but depending upon who I had available, I would find those folks to work on the rest. And then what do I think the CEO is supposed to do? I think the most important thing is creating shared context, making sure everyone on the team understands the whys behind what we're doing. I think most people focus on like telling everyone what they should be doing and not enough time telling why they should be doing this. Because when you get a good group of people around you, you get much better outcomes from them when they understand the why. And honestly, if they understand the why, they'll figure out the what if they're smart enough, right? And their what might be different than your what would have been, or you might combine together to come up with like the better answer. But I think that's the hardest part, because you always have kind of like this full omnipotent view generally of like what's happening and how all the pieces should be working. They don't have that. And it's easy to forget that as a CEO. And so you have to be very intentional about finding all sorts of ways to be like, oh my gosh, I need to spend time making sure my team all knows what each other's doing and why they're doing it, where we're going, and when.
Wow, love it. Yeah, and I agree. I mean, especially like you say, if you have really good people around you, you don't need to tell them what to do. There's a million ways to do the same thing. So the way you do it might not be the way that they might do it. You're really wasting your time. Let them do it the way they want to do it, as long as you get the right result out of it. And like you say, I mean, if you give them the right reason to get that good result, then they're going to work harder for it, right?
Yep.
Yeah. And it's funny that you said something about the depends on who you have around you. A music story, and I've read it in a book, is that when the Beatles formed, Paul McCartney plays all instruments. He's a very talented musician, and he was back then as well. And he ended up picking up the bass because there was too many guitar players. So he ended up being the bass player for the Beatles only because, not because he wanted to. He would probably have preferred to play piano or guitar, but there was no bass player, so he did it. Right? He filled in on the gap that was there.
That's amazing.
Cool. So now, how about, so speaking of, jamming and practicing and all that stuff, we talk about the jam room as the home office or wherever you get your work done. Tell me how you have found a place to work, over the years, working from home.
So it's interesting. I might take a very different tack on this than maybe most folks you have on this podcast. At the beginning of both of the companies I've started, UserVoice and now Fathom, I spent at least a year, most recently of almost 2 years, kind of living nomadically when the company started. And so rather than having like one space that I go work in, my whole challenge is always to figure out, how do I find a place to work? How do I have a good workspace anywhere I am? And so there's a few kind of things. Like one is like, I always focus on making sure I had like a good internet connection. Back in the day, it was like, I had like these like MiFis. Now I make sure I can tether to my phone. I actually travel with a good microphone because my team's fully remote. And I actually find that it's the difference between listening, I'm setting context all day, I'm on meetings all day, talking to folks about what's happening. And here, having good audio for those calls just makes it so much easier to listen to me for hours than not. So I like my travel kit is a battery pack. So I have a battery pack that can like do 2 full charges of my laptop. I have my phone, which I can tether from. I have a microphone with me. I usually bring a like memory foam seat pad. And I also make sure I actually never use an external monitor. And this is also a really weird thing because back in the day, I would have a home office that I would sometimes stay at. And I found when I had an external monitor, I get used to like all of my, my like productivity was based around how I use this space. Right. And I get really addicted to the external monitor. And I found that whenever I went traveling and was like working from a car or working from an airport, I wasn't as productive. And I actually get easily frustrated because like, oh, if only I had the big monitor, I would be so much more productive. And so I almost had to just like for a while, I just had to give up using external monitors because I couldn't deal with this kind of switching costs between those two experiences. And then I just got really good at working on a small screen and like got some apps that allowed me to like have multiple desktops and that sort of thing. So it's been an interesting challenge. I think for the last 2 years, I was nomading around the Southwest. I did calls out of like the passenger seat of my car, with like a virtual background at times. I actually traveled with a tiny little laptop desk that had like wheels. It was like a standing desk and honestly just worked from a lot of couches and Airbnbs. And so got really good at like looking at Airbnb listings and be like, okay, there's a good couch I could sit on. Oh, it's got a recliner, even better. It's got a view, even better. And so kind of just get good at figuring out like, what is my happy place? And my happy place is sitting on a soft, comfy chair that reclines, looking out on some view. That's where I'm most productive. So that's kind of that's my jam room.
Love it. I'm experiencing that exact same phenomenon. I've gone to the two monitors about a year ago, and now anytime I have to do something on my laptop, it's frustrating.
Really frustrating.
I'm like,
yeah.
I feel like I gotta move this over here, and I can't move it.
Yeah.
So good call.
And it makes you kind of not want to like, you're just like, oh, I don't even want to do this till I get home now. Right. And I was like, oh, it's just not an option. I got to get this done.
Yep. So I guess it depends on, I mean, if you want to live that life of going to coffee shops and traveling around and working from a laptop, then yeah, it's probably better to not have a situation where you're frustrated, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Because you're going to bring that into the work as well, right?
Yep.
Wow. So now the mic that you have, so you just plug that into your laptop then?
Yep.
Right on. Look at that. That's awesome. And it is a good idea.
It's also a directional mic too. So like when you're traveling and there's some, noise outside, right? It doesn't pick up any of that, right? I used to have to like cancel meetings or move them. I was like, oh, there's someone jackhammering outside or whatnot, right? And so directional mic is key.
Yep. And the laptop cameras are very good these days, so you don't really have to worry too much about that. It's mainly just the mic that you're thinking about, right?
Yeah. I do also travel with like a little ring light because like, yeah, sometimes the lighting in these places is terrible, right? That's the other piece I would bring.
Love it. Great advice. So now it's time for your solo. So tell me what's going on in your business that you're excited about.
We started this company 18 months ago. We launched just under a year ago. And it's, I think the first 6 months, it was kind of a struggle. And like we learned a lot about, how to make the onboarding process better and so on and so forth. But now we've hit our stride and, it's amazing when all the pieces come together and you see all the graphs start really going up and to the right. And so we've been growing like 30 to 40% a month for the last 4 or 5 months. And it's just really fun. Brings its own set of problems, but yeah. And again, I think I wake up every day mostly excited about getting emails. We have a Slack channel called Boom, and Boom is where people post just like video clips from Fathom or like, screenshots of emails where people are just effusive, excited about the product. And I always found that far more exciting than like even making money, right? Like the idea that people love the thing you're building. And so I feel like we finally hit our stride where we've got tons of people who, a lot of people are on Zoom calls these days, right? And a lot of people had the same experience I had on Zoom calls, trying to take notes either on pen and paper or trying to type up notes on a Google Doc while you're talking to someone. That process sucks. It's not fun to try to talk to someone and like also being really afraid you're going to miss something important when you're like talking to a customer or a client. And so, with Fathom, I think we're not just making a free product that people love, but we're actually making people's lives a little less stressful because now they can jump on these calls. Fathom's recording it, transcribing it, giving them an easy way to like highlight the important parts of the call. So like you just have a conversation people seem to love it. It's changed my work life. So it's just fun to see something that like was an idea in your head 2 years ago now manifest into something that is really kind of game changing.
Wow, that's really cool. So what you're saying is that you somehow interact with Zoom and you're transcribing the call as it happens.
Yep.
I know that for me, I transcribe the calls from all these podcasts afterwards using something like Descript or whatever. So this would basically take a step away.
Yep. It'll record the video, record the transcript. And then one of the most fun things is like if it has the ability to, like, while you're on the call, to basically like annotate. So if I was talking to you, you're a customer, I'm interviewing you, and you said something really interesting, maybe a piece of product feedback, or something I know I want to share with my team, maybe you got really excited, I can just click a button in Fathom, and Fathom will basically clip out that portion of the call, like highlight that. I can jump back to it after the call. I can take that clip, send it to my Slack channel. And so it kind of also makes these video calls, even more than a transcript, I can just take small snippets of the audio and video and send it to the right places, my CRM, my Slack, someone's email.
Wow, that's amazing. How does that work? How do you do that? You just hit a button or something? Or?
Yeah, we just have a little desktop app. So when the Fathom app is basically a desktop app or a Zoom app, and we just have a thing that's listening all the time for who's talking. And so it just pays attention to the transitions in the call. Right. And so when I hear something important, it like rewinds back in time to figure out when that person started talking, listens for when I start talking again. Like, it says, great, here's the video clip for this. And I think it's great because transcripts are cool and like kind of helpful mnemonic, but I actually find like the tone, like seeing the person's face, like all of that stuff, like hearing the actual conversation is the killer feature. Right. And so I remember being on the receiving end of notes from my team, and going back to like making sure you have shared context in your team. Sharing some notes from a call is one thing, but when you can actually share, hey, here's like a 3-minute highlight reel of this call I had with a customer, that then gets really everyone on the team aligned and understanding, and excited.
I love it. I'm going to try it.
Yeah, please do.
Well, now I'm curious. So you have a free app. So where does the business make money? There's got to be some sort of upgrade or something, or?
Yeah, so we find that, we want anyone to be able to use it as an individual for free. And then where we're making our money is when we see it spread within a company and, someone in management wants to use it across their team. And then they're like, I want to aggregate all of my team's calls so I can search across all of my team's calls and be alerted when, someone mentioned a competitor or some sort of, interesting moment happened. Right. And so we never ask individuals to pull out their credit card. We're asking kind of like managers and executives.
Oh, brilliant. So what you're doing really is you're the individual gets a benefit of, automatic transcribing and all that stuff. But when it comes to an organization, they get the benefit of searchability, making their teams work more seamlessly together and getting a better picture of what's going on in the organization.
Yeah. It's like, handoffs between teams, right? Someone bought the product and they got to hand off customer success. Here, watch the highlight reel of the call so you can really understand who this customer is. Someone's ramping up and learning, the business. Great, watch these calls with this customer or watch these clips. And then, it's also fun stuff like, again, tying it back to like, how do we get feedback to the right place in New York, right? Here's a stream of all of the feedback that we're hearing from customers on calls or all of the objections. So I think we're finding that most people's business are run on their CRMs, and most of their CRMs are filled with notes. And we'd like to replace that with video clips of customer calls going the right place.
Very cool, Richard. So how do we find out more about this?
Yeah, it's fathom.video. So not .com, but fathom.video. And if you go to fathom.video/pod, you will get the product not only for free, but you will make sure to skip our wait list. We do end up waitlisting. We have about 40,000 people on the wait list right now because we've got more demand than we've got CS folks to service that. So if you go to fathom.video/pod, you can skip right over that.
Love it. Thank you so much for all this and for rocking out with me today, Richard. This has been a lot of fun.
Tim, it's been fun. Thanks for having me.
Cool. To the listeners, make sure you subscribe, rate, and comment. We'll see you next time on the Work at Home Rockstar podcast.